Session 44, Dec 10th, 2024. The session began with the party deciding to hit up a lead Jacris had picked up a few weeks prior in Citrium. The local general goods store owner Thales had sold a large amount of digging gear to a strange man in dark robes and felt suspicious about the whole thing. The party traveled an afternoon's march to Citrium from the wreckage of Zaborg's destroyed ship. Arriving close to evening in the coastal town, the group head south towards where they suspected the person may have gone, an abandoned graveyard from centuries prior. The graveyard upon arrival appeared desecrated, with dozens of graves dug up and many more damaged or marked off. In the center of the cemetery appeared a gathering of hooded figures, guarded by sentries, with a hooded figure atop a burial mound attempting to force open a coffin with a pry bar. The group snuck into the cemetery and attempted to get as close as possible to the gathering of shady folks, but ended up taking too long in the attempt, as the strange cloaked man completed his task and successfully opened the coffin. Inside the coffin burst out a shadowy black demon, tall as a building and adorned in golden jewelry and a beautiful golden crown with leathery bat-like wings and sharp vicious claws. The demon quickly flew up in the air and then with incredible speed, flew straight to Sinus. The demon greedily snatched Sinus' coin purse from his side before conjuring a cloud of crows and harpies to attack the group and flying away. Sinus, however, had no tolerance for thieves of any kind and fired 2 arrows through the demon's wings, bringing it down to the earth, where he used the blessing of halos to burn the demon to cinders. The hooded hooligans revealed themselves to be a large band of returned soldiers, the evil indeed servants of the evil god Phoenix. The battle began in earnest with the leader, a human man with black hair who proclaimed himself as Maven, pulling out a dark glowing whip and lashing out from 100 feet away at the party and his return swarming. Tigrat attempted to eliminate one of the 3 returned, firing shadow magic blasts at the group from atop sentry posts, and activated the blessing of Mogus to cause havoc and strengthen herself for the battle to come. The ground around her warped and chaotic energy rifted off of her as she cut into the spellcaster. Jacris and Lil Bill provided cover fire to the group with fireball and shatter spells, but the numbers began to overwhelm the group. The group took several stray hits from shadow attacks and a few wounds from the blades wielded by the returned warriors. The toll being taken was too much for Jacris, who was snapped by an unseen lashing from the mysterious whip of Mavens and knocked out cold. Sinus knew they wouldn't survive without their healer, so he yelled a magic healing spell to bring the warlock back to his feet, but when Jacris stood back up he appeared disoriented. Instead of returning to the group to continue the fight, Jacris began walking towards Maven, and the 2 of them began to depart the cemetery together. Tigrat was able to notice, however, that chain tattoos had appeared around the wrist, neck, and ankles of their friend before the sudden change in behavior. The group had no time, however, to change course to save their friend, as the Indeed horde was slowly overwhelming the group. If with the blessings at their disposal, Sinus and Tigrat were both overwhelmed fighting off the warriors, and the casters were able to land enough damage on Lil Bill to knock all 3 of the heroes out. Only Zaborg was standing in this moment, but Lil Bill knew he couldn't let this be the end. Spitting up a pool of blood, the wizard stood up and gave Zaborg a simple order: heal Tigrat. Bill fired the only fireball he could muster, but it was enough to knock out the remaining warriors before they could swarm and kill the downed Sinus. Lil Bill took care to shape the spell around his ally so that his already serious injuries weren't exacerbated. Zaborg listened to directions like any good soldier would and used his last bit of magic to heal the wounded Minotaur, and with the 3 of them together, they were able to overwhelm the final standing sentry before anyone died. Unfortunately, the injuries brought young Sinus too close to death for the entity he was contracted with's comfort, and the being slipped inside the wounded soul to preserve it. Corrupting it even further, the group looked over at their barely conscious friend and were unable to avoid seeing the change in his young face. One of his brown eyes had turned a savage yellow, with black replacing the whites of his eye. Sinus stood up and gathered his money that was stolen, and the group realized the severity of what just happened. Jacris was gone, and they had no earthly idea where he had gone. Whatever gold they had was now second fiddle to saving their friend from whatever dark magic Maven is wielding against them. Their injuries too severe, however, the group departed to Citrium's tavern to rest their injuries. While they slept, they all had a dream of a city. The city they saw before them was covered in iron chains. People walked the street mindlessly, no hands not engaged in labor, the tired and sickly toiling away, all the while a shadowy overlord berates and assaults those who still themselves. The center of the city growing closer as the dream continued on, a towering castle growing closer and closer. While they all dreamed this dream, Jacris awoke to this reality.